Okay, so let's try solving another one of these inequalities together here. We'll do the quadratic again, and we'll use this sign chart. Get more practice with that sign chart, okay? Just going to leave that part out there. So I'm going to do, oh, excuse me. Oh, it's doing tight. I'm going to do problem number 23 from the book, okay? So it's 3x squared minus 4. 3x squared minus 4. You guys can see that, looks good. Is less than 4x. Alright, less than 4x. So it's a quadratic. It's not rational, there's no denominator, there's no absolute value. So it's that first style that we talked about. So we're going to just solve it kind of traditionally at first. Just imagine that was like an equal sign. So I want to bring everything over to one side and I'll have 0 on the other. So I'm going to bring all my x's over. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So it's going to be 3x squared minus 4x minus 4 is less than 0, right? You see that, right? Minus 4x here, minus 4x there. So now you have this. Now, use a quadratic. You could use the quadratic formula. You'll get the answer, no problem. But if you can, try to do it skillfully first. You can use your diamond method, or I'm going to just see if I can figure it out starting at the end. So I see it's a 3x squared, so I know it's got to be 3x and x. No way around that, because I'll do the factors. Now I'm looking at 4, so what are the factors of 4? Well, it's 1 and 4, or it's 2 and 2. And I want a negative 4 in the middle, and whatever I'm going to get, I'm going to multiply by 3. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. Just thinking about it, I did this already, so I remember it. But I just thought about it first. But if I put a 4 here, if I was 4 and 1, 4 times 3 is 12. That's just too big. If I put a 4 here, 4 times 1 is 4, and then a 3, that's too small. That's the difference of won't be negative 4. So I pretty much got to 2 right away. And if you think about it, 2 and 3 is going to get 6. So that would give me a negative 6, a positive 2. That would be a negative 6, and a positive 2 would get me to my negative 4. So hopefully you can follow along. If you don't, pause the video, just do it yourself. Use your diamond method, however you want to do it. Get that. Less than 0. So, excuse me, I'm going to eat my carrot. We got 2 roots. The first one you can see immediately, x is just 2. Now the second one, let's say it's 3x plus 2. What I'm doing is basically saying like equals 0, just to find that root, if you will. So x, of course, will be 3x equals negative 2. X equals negative 2 thirds. So those are my 2 special points. X is 2, and the x is negative 2 thirds. So when I make my sign chart, those are going to be very key points. So let's go ahead over here, make my number line. Negative 2 thirds, so I'm going to put my 0 in right here. I should use a different color for you guys. Yeah. And now negative 2 thirds, I'm going to put right about here. Negative 2 thirds. Put my little dashed line down it. And then the other spot key point is 2. So I'm going to put that over here. 2, put my little dashed line. And then you're going to write the different factors, if you will. So it's x minus 2, and it's 3x plus 2. And then the third line is when you multiply those together. So it's this times that. I'm going to give myself a little space. Just remember that was there. So let's do this x minus 2 first. So when x is exactly 2, that's going to become 0. And the whole thing will become 0. So this whole thing will become 0 at that point. When this is a little bit less than 2, of course, this is going to be negative. And when it's less than negative 2 thirds, it's still going to be negative. When it's bigger than 2, it's going to be positive. So that's an easy one. All right, 3x plus 2. When that's exactly negative 2 thirds, that turns to 0. You can even check that in your head. 3 times negative 2 thirds, that's going to be negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2, 0. Now if it's a little bit bigger, that of course is going to be positive. And if it's a lot bigger, it'll be very positive. If it's a little smaller than negative 2 thirds, it's going to be negative. Now you do that last step. What happens when you multiply these two guys together? Well, if I multiplied a negative number, if this were negative, right, that's what I'm doing, I'm saying, well, if I was in the area less than negative 2 thirds, a negative times a negative is going to give me positive. Ooh. Now if it's right at negative 2 thirds, I'm going to get a 0. When I use a different color. Boom, right? Because that 0 is going to dominate that negative sign. It's going to turn into a 0. Now, if it's in this in-between state, a negative times a positive, it's going to be negative. And if it's over here, it's going to be positive. So going back to the original problem, I want the solution of when it's less than 0. In other words, I want to know when it's negative. So it's only negative in this one area, in between negative 2/3 and 2. And it can't equal either one. So this solution is going to be a little different than other problem. When x is greater than negative 2/3, or when it's less than 2. Voila. That will be my answer, because that will give me a negative answer. And this is a nice problem. If you really think about it, and I invite you to try this, try to think about that in your head. And you may be able to get to that. It's a little bit trickier because you're kind of holding more stuff. If you didn't use the sign chart, in other words, if you just said, okay, well, let's see. If x is bigger than 2, that's going to be positive. And if x is bigger than 2 over here, that's also going to be positive. So positive times a positive is positive. If x is less than 2, that's going to turn negative. And then you have to sort of think about this one. Well, sometimes when x is less than negative 2, it's going to be negative, but sometimes it's going to be positive. So you got to kind of find that right point because you want to avoid the negative times the negative. So hopefully you can understand that sign chart for this style. Work on a couple on your own, and if you have any questions, let me know.